The evening air was cool as Vin Diesel pulled his black SUV into the reserved spot behind Toretto's, his upscale restaurant tucked away in a bustling corner of downtown Los Angeles. Unlike most celebrity restaurant owners who splashed their names across billboards, Vin preferred to keep his ownership quiet. Most of his staff knew, of course, but regular customers remained unaware that the famous action star was behind the establishment. Tonight, Vin wore his typical incognito outfit, dark jeans, a simple black t-shirt that stretched across his muscular frame, and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. No sunglasses after dark, that would only draw attention. He had perfected the art of blending in despite his recognizable build. The restaurant had been open for 3 years now, and while Vin received regular reports from his manager, he liked to drop by unannounced every few months. These surprise visits gave him the most honest look at how things were really running. Just checking in, he texted his manager, Carlos. "Don't tell anyone I'm here." Carlos replied immediately, "Got it, boss. Kitchen's having a good night." Vin slipped in through the employee entrance, nodding briefly to the dishwasher who did a double take, but knew better than to make a fuss. The restaurant hummed with the pleasant sounds of a successful Tuesday night, clinking glasses, warm conversation, and the soft jazz playlist Vin had selected himself months ago. From his position near the back hallway, he could observe the main dining room. The space reflected his vision perfectly: warm lighting, rustic wood tables, and comfortable leather booths. Not too fancy, but nice enough for a special night out. The walls featured subtle nods to car culture and family, themes close to Vin's heart. He watched as servers moved efficiently between tables. The food coming out of the kitchen looked excellent. The new chef was working out well. Vin felt a small surge of pride. Despite his busy filming schedule, he had built something real here, something that existed outside the Hollywood bubble. Vin planned to make his way to the office to review some financial reports before heading home. But as he turned down the hallway that led past the employee break room, an unexpected sound caught his attention. Soft crying. He stopped, unsure if he had heard correctly. The sound was barely audible above the restaurant noise, but it was there, someone quietly sobbing. Vin hesitated. He wasn't supposed to be here tonight, and he generally tried to maintain professional distance from his staff. Their problems weren't his business, but something about the raw emotion in those quiet sobs made it impossible for him to continue walking. Following the sound, he turned down the service corridor that led to the employee lockers. There, seated on a bench with her back to him, was a young woman in the restaurant's black uniform. Her shoulders shook slightly as she tried to muffle her crying. Vin recognized her immediately as Maya Rodriguez. She'd been with the restaurant since opening day, working her way up from hostess to one of their best servers. In staff meetings, she was always professional and composed, with a warm smile for customers. Seeing her break down like this stopped him cold. For a moment, Vin stood frozen in the hallway, unsure whether to approach her or slip away unnoticed. He wasn't good at handling emotional situations, at least not off camera. But something about Maya's obvious distress tugged at him. Before he could decide what to do, Maya sensed his presence and turned around. Her eyes, red-rimmed and wet with tears, widened in shock as she recognized who was standing there. "Mr. Diesel," she gasped, quickly wiping at her face. "I'm so sorry, I didn't know." "No, please, it's okay," Vin said quickly, raising his hands in a calming gesture. He felt uncomfortable catching Maya in such a private moment. "I didn't mean to surprise you." Maya scrambled to her feet, smoothing her black uniform and trying to erase all evidence of her tears. Her long dark hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, but a few strands had come loose around her face. She tucked them behind her ear with shaking hands. "I was just taking a quick break," she explained, voice still unsteady. "I'll get back to my tables right away." Vin shook his head. "That's not why I'm here. I just happened to be walking by, and—" He paused, not quite knowing how to continue. Emotional conversations weren't his strong point. An awkward silence filled the space between them. Through the walls, they could hear the distant sounds of the busy restaurant. Plates clattering, the hum of conversation, soft music playing. It felt like they were in a different world back here in the dim hallway. "Are you all right?" Vin finally asked, his deep voice softer than usual. Maya looked down at her hands. For a moment, it seemed like she might brush off his question with a quick "I'm fine." but then her shoulders slumped slightly. Not really, she admitted. But it's nothing you need to worry about, Mr. Daisel. Just personal stuff. Vin hesitated again. He could simply nod and walk away. That would be the easy thing to do. But something about Maya's expression, a mixture of embarrassment and genuine distress, made him stay. Look, he said, I know I'm your boss, and this is weird, but sometimes talking helps. He gestured to the bench she had just vacated. Do you mind if I sit? Surprise flashed across Maya's face. She nodded slowly and sat back down, leaving space for him. Vin lowered his large frame onto the bench, which suddenly seemed much smaller with his presence. He removed his cap and set it beside him, no longer concerned about maintaining his disguise. I've noticed your work here, he said, trying to ease into conversation. Carlos always mentions you in the reports. You're one of our best. A small, sad smile touched Maya's lips. Thank you, I really do love working here. So what's going on? Vin asked directly. He'd never been one for small talk. Maya took a deep breath and wiped away a fresh tear that had escaped. My mom is sick, she finally said. Cancer. She's been fighting it for 8 months now. Vin's expression grew serious. He knew all too well about losing someone to cancer. The treatments were going okay, but today her doctor called, Maya continued, her voice breaking slightly. The cancer is spreading again. They want to try a new treatment, but our insurance won't cover it. And I just don't know how we're going to. She trailed off, unable to finish. Vin sat quietly, taking in her words. Outside of his family and closest friends, he rarely let people share their personal struggles with him. Fame had built walls around him over the years, necessary ones for protection. But Maya's pain felt familiar. It echoed his own past losses. I'm sorry, he said simply. That's really tough. Maya nodded, embarrassed by her outburst. I shouldn't have broken down at work. I'm usually better at keeping it together. It's just that the call came right before my shift, and I couldn't. You don't need to explain, Vin interrupted gently. Everyone has moments when things get too heavy. A customer's laugh echoed from the dining room, a sharp contrast to the serious conversation unfolding in the hallway. How long has your mom been sick? Vin asked, surprising himself with the personal question. Maya looked up, clearly not expecting his continued interest. Since last summer. She's been so strong through everything, but I can see she's getting tired. Vin nodded, understanding in his eyes. For the first time in years, he felt the walls he kept around himself beginning to crack, just a little. I lost my mom too, Vin said quietly, the words surprising even himself. He rarely spoke about his personal losses, especially with people he barely knew. But something about Maya's situation struck a chord deep within him. Maya's eyes widened slightly. I'm so sorry, I didn't know. Vin nodded, his usually guarded expression softening. It was years ago, but some days it feels like yesterday. He looked down at his hands, strong and calloused from years of action films. Cancer too. The hallway fell silent except for the muffled sounds of the restaurant beyond. A server passed by the end of the corridor, but didn't notice them sitting in the dimly lit space. Did you get to spend time with her? Before, Maya asked gently. Not enough, Vin admitted. I was just starting out in Hollywood, always thinking there would be more time. He shook his head. That's one of my biggest regrets. Maya wiped away a fresh tear. I'm trying to be there as much as I can, working here during the day, caring for her at night. But the medical bills keep growing, and now this new treatment. Vin watched as Maya tried to compose herself. Her uniform was perfectly pressed despite her obvious exhaustion. The name tag pinned to her shirt was slightly crooked. What's the treatment? He asked. It's a new immunotherapy, Maya explained. The success rates are promising, but it's experimental. Insurance won't cover it, and it costs more than I make in 6 months. Vin nodded slowly, considering her words. He thought about the restaurant's profits, the millions he'd made from his last film, and how disconnected he often felt from the struggles of everyday people. Your mother, he said carefully. What's she like? The question brought a genuine smile to Maya's face for the first time. She's amazing. Raised me and my sister alone after my dad left. Worked 2 jobs most of my life, but never missed a school event. She laughed softly. She's actually a huge fan of yours. We watched all the fast movies together when she started treatment. Said they took her mind off things. Vin couldn't help but smile at that. Sounds like a strong woman. The strongest, Maya agreed. She glanced at her watch and sighed. I should get back to my tables. Carlos will wonder where I am. Before she could stand, Vin put a gentle hand on her shoulder. Wait, what hospital is your mom at? Memorial Downtown, Maya replied, confusion crossing her face. Why? Vin didn't answer directly. Instead, he pulled out his phone and typed a quick message. The screen illuminated his face in the dim hallway. I know some people there, he said vaguely. What's your mom's full name? Elena Rodriguez, Maya answered, her brow furrowed. But Mr. Diesel, you don't have to. Call me Vin, he interrupted. And I'm not doing anything yet, just asking questions. Maya watched as he continued typing on his phone. The famous actor sitting beside her on a break room bench suddenly seemed more human than she had ever imagined. Not the action hero from posters, but a man who understood loss. From the dining room came the sound of breaking glass followed by a burst of laughter. The normal sounds of restaurant life continued, oblivious to the conversation unfolding in the back corridor. I should really get back, Maya said, rising from the bench. Thank you for listening. I'm sorry you had to see me like this. Vin stood too, his imposing frame filling the narrow hallway. No apologies needed. Family is everything, Maya. Taking care of your mother makes you stronger, not weaker. Maya nodded, touched by his unexpected kindness. Thank you. As she turned to leave, Vin called after her. Maya, don't mention to anyone that we talked. Not yet. She looked back, confusion evident on her face, but nodded in agreement. Of course. Vin watched her walk away, straightening her uniform and wiping the last traces of tears from her face. When she disappeared around the corner, he pulled his phone out again and dialed the number. Mike, it's me, he said when his financial advisor answered. I need to set something up. Tonight. The following morning, Maya sat in the small waiting room of Memorial Downtown Hospital. She had worked a double shift the night before, going straight from her conversation with Vin Diesel to serving tables with a forced smile. Now she was exhausted, dark circles under her eyes as she waited for her mother's doctor. The waiting room was almost empty at this early hour. Just an elderly couple in the corner, and a man in scrubs, sleeping in an uncomfortable chair. Maya checked her phone every few minutes, worried she might be late for her afternoon shift at the restaurant. Ms. Rodriguez? Maya looked up to see Dr. Paddle standing in the doorway. The oncologist's face was unreadable as she gestured for Maya to follow her. Is my mom okay? Maya asked immediately, her heart racing as they walked down the sterile hallway. Your mother is fine, Dr. Paddle assured her. But something unusual has happened, and I wanted to speak with you privately. They entered a small consultation room where Dr. Paddle closed the door and took a seat behind her desk. Maya perched nervously on the edge of the chair across from her. What's going on? Maya asked. Dr. Paddle looked down at the file in front of her. Yesterday, we discussed the new immunotherapy treatment for your mother, the one not covered by insurance. Maya nodded, her throat tight. I remember. Well, Dr. Paddle continued. This morning I received notification that your mother has been accepted into a special patient assistance program. The treatment will be fully covered. Maya stared at the doctor in disbelief. What? How is that possible? You said yesterday there were no programs available. I know. Dr. Paddle seemed equally puzzled. This appears to be a private foundation. The paperwork came through early this morning. Everything is in order. A private foundation? Maya repeated. Which one? Dr. Paddle glanced at the papers. The Family First Foundation. Apparently they specifically select patients with promising outcomes but financial barriers. Your mother fit their criteria perfectly. Maya's mind raced. Family first. The words Vin had spoken just last night echoed in her head. Family is everything. Could it be possible? When did this foundation contact you? Maya asked carefully. That's the strange part. Dr. Paddle admitted. I received the paperwork around 6 a.m. today. It's all properly processed, with signatures from the hospital administration. Usually these things take weeks. Maya sat back in her chair, stunned. She remembered Vin's final words to her. Don't mention to anyone that we talked. Not yet. So what happens now? She asked. We can start the treatment immediately, Dr. Paddle said, smiling genuinely for the first time. Your mother's first session is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Tears of relief filled Maya's eyes. And it's really all covered? All of it? Dr. Paddle nodded. Every cent. The foundation even arranged for transportation to and from treatments. And there's a monthly stipend to cover lost work hours for family caregivers. She slid a packet across the desk. That would be you. Maya stared at the packet, unable to believe what was happening. The stipend amount listed was more than she made in tips during a good week at the restaurant. I don't understand, she whispered. Sometimes good things just happen, Dr. Paddle said kindly. Your mother is a fighter, and now she has the resources to match her spirit. Maya left the consultation room in a daze. She walked to her mother's room, where Elena was sitting up in bed watching a morning talk show. Mama, Maya said, her voice thick with emotion. Elena turned, her thin face lighting up at the sight of her daughter. What did the doctor say? You look like you've seen a ghost. Maya sat on the edge of the bed and took her mother's hand. They found a way to cover the new treatment. All of it. Elena's eyes widened. Como es posible? I think, Maya said slowly, we might have a guardian angel. As she explained everything to her mother, Maya couldn't help wondering what would happen when she returned to work that afternoon. Would Vin be there? Should she thank him, or pretend nothing had happened, as he requested? One thing was certain. The man she had glimpsed last night was far more complex than any character he had ever portrayed on screen. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the restaurant as Maya arrived for her shift. She had spent the morning with her mother, both of them crying and laughing in disbelief at their sudden change in fortune. Now, as she tied her black apron around her waist, she couldn't stop wondering if Vin Diesel would be there. You're smiling? Carlos observed as Maya checked the reservation list. That's different from yesterday. Maya tried to tone down her expression. Just had some good news about my mom. Carlos nodded, not pressing for details. Table assignments are on the board. We got a private party coming in at 7 for the back room. Maya glanced at the schedule and froze. The private room booking was listed simply as FF meeting, 8 guests. FF, family first. Her heart raced as she went about her regular duties, setting tables and checking inventory. Every time the door opened, she looked up expectantly, but there was no sign of Vin. By 6:30, the restaurant was filling with the regular dinner crowd. Maya expertly balanced plates and charmed customers, all while keeping one eye on the private room. Carlos had assigned another server, Josh, to handle the mysterious FF party. Any idea of who's coming to the private room? Maya asked Josh casually as they both waited at the bar for drink orders. Josh shrugged. Carlos just said it's important, and to give them space. No photographers allowed. At exactly 7 o'clock, Maya watched from across the restaurant as a group of well-dressed men and women entered through the side door. They were immediately escorted to the private room. She recognized Finn among them, dressed in a simple dark suit, his presence commanding even from a distance. Their eyes met briefly across the room. He gave a small, almost imperceptible nod before disappearing into the private area with his guests. An hour into her shift, Maya was delivering desserts to a couple celebrating their anniversary when Carlos approached her. Maya, can you come with me for a moment? He asked quietly. Her stomach tightened. Is something wrong? Not at all. Just need you for something special. Carlos led her toward the private room, stopping just outside the door. Mr. Diesel has requested you specifically, he explained, looking confused. Something about a special wine presentation? Maya nodded, trying to appear calm though her heart was pounding. Of course. When she entered the private room, 8 people were seated around a large round table. The conversation stopped as she walked in. Vin sat with his back to the wall, facing the door. Beside him was an older man with silver hair and a designer suit. The others looked like executives or lawyers. Maya, Vin said, his deep voice filling the room. Thank you for joining us. She stood nervously by the door. Carlos said something about wine. Vin smiled slightly. That was just an excuse. I'd like you to meet some people. He gestured to the silver-haired man. This is Mike Thompson, my financial advisor, and these are the board members of the Family First Foundation. Maya's breath caught in her throat. Around the table, the well-dressed strangers nodded politely at her. I don't understand, she said softly. Vin stood up and moved toward her. The foundation was my idea, but we just made it official today. It's going to help restaurant workers and their families with medical expenses and education costs. Mike Thompson cleared his throat. We've been working all day to get the paperwork in order. The first recipient is an Elena Rodriguez at Memorial Downtown. Maya's eyes filled with tears. That's my mother. We know, Vin said quietly. She's just the beginning. We're expanding to all my restaurants, then hopefully industry-wide. One of the women at the table spoke up. Mr. Diesel believes the service industry takes care of everyone else, but rarely gets taken care of in return. We're changing that. Maya looked at Vin, unable to find the right words. Why? She finally asked. Why do this? Vin's eyes held a warmth that rarely showed in his public appearances. Because you reminded me of something important. In the movies, I talk about family all the time. It was time to make those words mean something in the real world. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind for Maya. Her mother began the new treatment, showing small but promising improvements. Each morning, a car from the Family First Foundation arrived to take Elena to her appointments. And each evening, Maya received updates from the medical team. Meanwhile, news about the foundation spread quietly through Toretto's staff. No public announcements had been made, no press releases issued. Vin preferred to keep the foundation's work private, just as he kept his restaurant ownership low-key. On a rainy Tuesday evening, Maya arrived for her shift to find an envelope with her name on it waiting at the employee entrance. Carlos asked me to give you this, said the hostess, said it's important. Maya opened it to find a handwritten note on plain paper. Asterisk Maya, asterisk. Asterisk office. 5 p.m. before your shift, asterisk. Asterisk VD asterisk. At precisely 5 o'clock, Maya knocked on the office door at the back of the restaurant. Her hand trembled slightly, still not entirely believing everything that had happened. Come in, called the familiar deep voice. Vin sat behind the desk, looking more casual than the last time she'd seen him. He wore a simple black t-shirt that emphasized his muscular build. Several folders were spread out in front of him. You wanted to see me? Maya asked, closing the door behind her. Vin nodded, gesturing to the chair across from him. How's your mom doing? Better, Maya said, smiling genuinely. The doctors are surprised by how well she's responding to the treatment. She's even started walking around the block each day. Good, Vin said, satisfaction evident in his expression. That's really good. An awkward silence fell between them. Despite everything he'd done, Maya still found it strange to be having a personal conversation with Vin Diesel, the man on movie posters, the action star whose films she'd watched with her mother. I wanted to talk to you about your schedule, Vin finally said, opening one of the folders. Maya's stomach tightened. Was he going to ask her to leave? Had her emotional breakdown a few weeks ago made him uncomfortable having her at the restaurant? I understand if you need me to, she began. I want you to cut back your hours, Vin interrupted, looking up from the paperwork. Maya blinked in confusion. Cut back? Carlos tells me you're working doubles almost every day, sometimes 6 days a week. Vin's expression was serious. That's too much, especially with your mom's situation. I need the hours, Maya explained. Even with the foundation's help for mom's treatment, I still have rent, and I'm trying to save. For nursing school, Vin finished for her. I know. Maya stared at him. How did you know about nursing school? A small smile touched Vin's lips. I do my research. He pushed a different folder across the desk toward her. Open it. With hesitant fingers, Maya flipped open the folder. Inside was an acceptance letter from the nursing program at the local community college, the same program she'd been forced to drop out of when her mother got sick. I don't understand, she whispered. The second phase of the Family First Foundation, Vin explained. Education support. Your tuition is covered. Books too. And there's a living stipend, so you only need to work part-time. Maya looked up, tears threatening to spill over. Why me? There must be others who need this more. Vin leaned back in his chair, his expression softening. Maybe, but sometimes life puts specific people in your path for a reason. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. When I heard you crying that night, I could have walked away. Almost did, but something made me stop. I'm glad you did, Maya said softly. Me too. Vin stood up, signaling the end of their meeting. Classes start next month. Carlos already adjusted your schedule. 3 shifts a week, no doubles. Maya rose from her chair, clutching the folder to her chest. I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me, Vin said, his voice returning to its usual gruff tone. Just finish your degree, take care of your mom, and someday, when you're a nurse, remember there are always people who need help, even when they don't ask for it. As Maya turned to leave, Vin added, and Maya, this stays between us. The foundation gets the credit, not me. Understood? She nodded, understanding now why he valued his privacy so much. Understood. 6 months passed quickly. The seasons changed, summer heat giving way to fall breezes in Los Angeles. Maya's life had transformed in ways she could never have imagined on that tearful night in the restaurant hallway. Her mother's health had improved dramatically. Elena still needed regular treatments, but she had regained weight and strength. The doctors were cautiously optimistic, using words like remission and recovery that had seemed impossible before. Maya herself had completed her first semester of nursing school with straight A's, balancing her studies with her reduced schedule at Toretto's. Her classmates often wondered how she managed to pay for school while working part-time, but Maya kept her secret, honoring her promise to Vin. On a crisp October evening, Maya arrived for her Friday night shift to find the restaurant unusually busy. A line of expensive cars stretched around the block, and several security guards stood at the entrance. What's happening? Maya asked Josh as she tied on her apron in the break room. Some big Hollywood event, Josh replied excitedly. The restaurant's closed to the public tonight. Private party only. Carlos appeared in the doorway, looking more stressed than usual. Maya, you're on the VIP section tonight. VIP section? Maya repeated. We don't have a VIP section. We do tonight, Carlos said, handing her a special name tag. Just the back 3 tables. Very important guests. Mr. Diesel specifically requested you. Maya's heart skipped. In the 6 months since their office meeting, she had only seen Vin once, briefly, when he came in for a quick meeting with the management team. He had nodded to her across the room but hadn't approached her. The restaurant had been transformed for the evening. Soft lighting cast a warm glow over the tables. Elaborate flower arrangements stood in corners usually occupied by waiting customers. A small stage had been set up near the bar, with a podium and microphone. At 8 o'clock precisely, the doors opened and guests began to arrive. Maya recognized several famous actors and directors among them. Industry executives in expensive suits mingled with creative types in more casual attire. All were directed to assigned tables by the hostesses. Maya's VIP section remained empty until Vin himself walked in, accompanied by 2 older women and a man who looked remarkably like him, his mother's twin brother, Maya later learned. They took seats at the center table in her section. Maya, Vin greeted her, a rare smile brightening his usually serious face. Good to see you. You too, Mr. Diesel, she replied professionally, though her hands shook slightly as she handed out menus. Vincent talks about you often, said one of the women, who introduced herself as Vin's godmother. Says you're going to be an excellent nurse someday. Maya blushed. That's the plan. Throughout dinner, Maya provided impeccable service, filling wine glasses and delivering courses with practiced precision. All the while, she noticed Vin watching her with what seemed like pride. After the main course, the lights dimmed slightly, and Mike Thompson, Vin's financial advisor, took the stage. The room quieted. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike announced, thank you for joining us tonight for the official launch of the Family First Foundation. A screen descended behind him, displaying the foundation's logo, a simple design featuring hands supporting a house. What began as a small idea has grown into something remarkable, Mike continued. In just 6 months, we provided medical assistance to 37 families and educational support to 22 individuals in the service industry. Maya stood at the back of the room, listening in awe as Mike detailed the foundation's accomplishments and future goals. This had all started because Vin had heard her crying. One moment of vulnerability had sparked something that was now helping dozens of families. As the presentation continued, Maya felt a presence beside her. Vin had quietly moved to stand next to her. "What do you think?" he asked softly, nodding toward the stage. "It's amazing," Maya whispered. "I had no idea it had grown so much." Vin's eyes remained on the presentation. "This is just the beginning," he said. "Next year, we expand to all restaurant workers in LA." Maya looked at him, finally understanding the full scope of his vision. "And you still don't want credit for any of it?" Vin shook his head. Some things mean more when they're done quietly. 1 year to the day after Vin had found Maya crying in the hallway, Toretto's restaurant buzzed with its usual Friday night energy. Regular customers filled the tables, unaware of the significance of the date or how much had changed because of it. Maya worked her usual Friday shift, now just once a week as she balanced her final semester of nursing school with clinical rotations at Memorial Downtown Hospital. Her black uniform was the same, but the woman wearing it had transformed, confident, focused, and unburdened by the crushing weight of medical bills and uncertainty. At home, her mother was not just surviving but thriving. Alana had finished her treatments 3 months ago, with doctors using the word remission more confidently now. She had even started volunteering at a cancer support group, sharing her story of unexpected help that came just when hope seemed lost. As Maya delivered a tray of drinks to a table of businessmen, the front door opened. Most customers didn't notice the man who walked in, casually dressed in jeans and a dark jacket, but Maya recognized him immediately. Vin nodded to the hostess, who clearly knew to expect him. Instead of being seated, he made his way to the bar and ordered a drink. His eyes scanned the restaurant until they found Maya. With a slight tilt of his head, he indicated he wanted to speak with her. "I need to take my break," Maya told Carlos, who glanced toward the bar and nodded knowingly. Maya approached Vin cautiously. Despite everything that had happened, she still felt a flutter of nervousness around him. He wasn't just her boss or benefactor. He was Vin Diesel, a man whose face appeared on billboards and movie screens worldwide. "Join me?" Vin asked, gesturing to the empty stool beside him. Maya sat down. "I didn't know you were coming in tonight." "Just passing through," Vin replied, taking a sip of his drink. "Thought I'd check in. Been a while." Indeed it had. The Family First Foundation had grown beyond anyone's expectations. Now with offices in 3 cities and support programs for restaurant workers across California that operated smoothly without much input from Vin himself. His initial donation had been supplemented by contributions from other wealthy celebrities, many of whom had no idea who had started the foundation. "How's nursing school?" Vin asked. "Almost done," Maya said, unable to hide her pride. "I graduate next month. Already have a job lined up at Memorial." Vin nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. "And your mom?" "Cancer-free," Maya said, the words still feeling miraculous each time she spoke them. "Her doctor says her case study is being included in a medical journal. The treatment worked better than anyone expected." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the noise of the busy restaurant washing over them. A year ago, they had been strangers. Now they were connected by something neither could fully explain. "You know," Maya said finally, "I never properly thanked you. For everything." Vin shook his head. "No thanks needed." "But there is," Maya insisted. "You didn't just help my mom or put me through school. You showed me that sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places." She paused. "And that one person really can make a difference." Vin looked slightly uncomfortable with her gratitude, as he always did. "The foundation is doing the work. I just provided the money." "We both know it's more than that," Maya said quietly. "You could have just written a check that night and been done with it. Instead, you built something that's helping hundreds of people now." For a moment, Vin's usual guarded expression softened. "Maybe I needed it too," he admitted. "All these years talking about family and movies." He trailed off, then continued more softly. "Sometimes you need a reminder of what really matters." The restaurant manager approached, apologetic for interrupting. "Mr. Diesel, your car is waiting whenever you're ready." Vin nodded, finishing his drink. As he stood to leave, he placed a hand briefly on Maya's shoulder. "Last thing, I'm starting a scholarship fund for nursing students who want to work in oncology. Thought you might want to be on the selection committee." Maya's eyes widened. "Me? But I'm just—" "You're exactly the right person," Vin interrupted. Someone who understands both sides, the medical part and what families go through. As he turned to leave, Maya called after him. Why do you do all this and never take any credit? Vin looked back, a rare smile crossing his face. Real heroes don't need their names in lights, Maya. They just do what needs to be done. With that, he walked out the same way he had walked in a year before, quietly, without fanfare, leaving changed lives in his wake.